Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. So today video is on Blazor WebAssembly CRUD sample using .NET 7 API as a backend and MudBlazor UI components. So the main goal of this video is to implement read operation. To implement read operation in the API project, we are going to create a get endpoint, and that get endpoint we are going to consume in our Blazor WebAssembly project. So to implement the read operation, I added some sample data into the table. So let's create a endpoint to fetch this data. So in our API project, go to iSuperheroes service. Here let me define a method definition. Okay. So async. So this method returns collection of our superheroes. Okay. And let's define the method name like get superheroes async. So let's implement this method in our superhero service. Okay. So let's implement the method. So here we just use our database context. Our table is superheroes dot to list async. Okay. It's going to return the collection of data from the database. Okay. Now let's create HTTP GET endpoint in our superheroes controller. Okay. So HTTP GET. Okay. I will name it like GET async. So async task. Okay. So here we first fetch the results from our superhero service. Okay. So I superhero service dot get superheroes async method, and we are going to simply return the results. Okay, that's our endpoint. So let's test our endpoint using the Swagger page. So let me run the API project. Okay, here is my endpoint. Let me try to execute it. Okay, some error happening. That is because I haven't used await here. Okay, and check-in service also. We are using asynchronous call, right? We must await it. Okay. Okay. Now let's rerun again. Okay, let's check the endpoint. Okay, I'm getting the response. So now let's consume this endpoint in our WebAssembly application. Okay. So first let's run our WebAssembly application also. Okay, let me add first some text on my navbar. Okay, let's close all the API files. Okay, and in the WebAssembly application, go to shade and main layout. Okay, here I will add text like super heroes. Okay. Okay, I am getting now superheroes text. Let's create a model for this API response in Blazor WebAssembly application. So for that, let me create a folder like view models. So inside of the view model, let me create a class like superheroes VM view model. Okay. So let's add all the properties that are in our API table class. Okay, same response model, right? So I will simply copy the properties from this class into my view model. Okay, now let's add this namespace into our imports file. Okay, import.razor file. All the global namespace will register in this file. Okay, go to the program.cs file in our WebAssembly project. Okay, here let's add our API domain. Okay, you have to register for the HTTP client instance API domain. So our API domain is this, right? So copy the domain and add here. Next, let's create a page level component to display our API response. So in pages folder, let me create a new folder. Name the new folder like superheroes. Okay. Inside of it, let me create a Blazor component. Okay, I will name it like all superheroes. Okay. So this component to display my all superheroes. Okay, so Blazor component contains two sections of code. One is HTML, another one is C sharp. So C sharp code must be written inside of the @ code block. Okay. Let me add a route for this component. So to add a route, we can use page directive. Okay, specify page directive. It should be small p and open braces. And your path must start with slash. Okay, and I will name it like superheroes slash home. So this is my superheroes home page. Okay, let's save and run and access this URL. Okay, let me access the superheroes slash home. Okay, sorry, there is nothing at this address. Let me copy the route. Okay, superheroes. Heroes. Okay, I renamed my route. Okay, now let's check superheroes. Okay, now see all superheroes. That is from here H3 tag. Okay, that means I am able to load my page level component. Okay, now let's inject the HTTP instance. Okay, so that I can call HTTP calls. So to inject any service, you can use @inject directive, and I want to inject HTTP client, right? So HTTP client, and I will give the name like HTTP. Okay, so let me create a method inside of this code block for invoking the API call. Okay, so private async task. Okay, get all super heroes async. Okay, so this going to return the collection of our API response. I have defined like superheroes VM, right? So list of superheroes VM. Okay, so I can call like await HTTP, okay, and get from JSON async, and here we have to define the type of output, okay, that is list of superheroes, okay, and here we have to define the path of the endpoint. So what is the path of our endpoint, get endpoint? This is the path slash API slash superheroes. So copy that endpoint and add it here. Okay, now once we got the response, we have to store it to some variable. So let me define a variable here to store the API response. Okay, so list of superheroes VM. Okay, all heroes. Okay, initialize it. Now let me assign API response to this method. So whenever this component loads, this method need to be called. For that we can add page life cycle method of Blazor component, that is on initialize async. So it will be invoked automatically when the component initialized. Okay. So protected override, okay, on initialized async. Okay. So we can remove this line of code, and here I can call my get all superheroes method. And here, so this must be a void method. Okay. Because I am directly assigning response here, right? It can be a void, means simply you can write like task. Okay, let's check whether API call is invoking or not when the component is initialized. Okay, so if I reload, I am getting some exception. Let's see what is the exception. The exception is course issue. Okay, server is blocking our WebAssembly request because both are running under different port numbers, right? Technically different domains. So in our API project, we must enable CORS. So go to API project program.cs file. Here, let's enable the CORS. Builder.services.add CORS. Okay, and add options. Options dot we need to add a policy. Okay, let me give a name to my policy like Blazor CORS. Okay, any name you can give. And here I need to define the policy. So policy, policy dot with origin. Okay, to the with origin we have to provide our client URL so that API will allow that client. So copy the Blazor WebAssembly domain. Okay, add it here. And let's add few more methods like allow any method and allow any header. Okay, so I have created a course policy. Now let's register a middleware for this. Okay, just above authorization middleware, I can call use course. So inside of it, we have to specify the name of our policy. So copy this name and add it here. So after adding the course policy, make sure to rerun our API project. Okay. Okay. And we have to remove the slash. Okay. Don't add any slash after the port number. Okay. Now rerun the API project. Okay. Now if I check my Blazor application, now there is no error. If I go to network calls, see my superheroes API call is successful 200. So Blazor application able to consume the endpoint. Now let's render this response onto the UI by using MudBlazor CRUD component. Okay, first let's go to MudBlazor website. Okay, go to components and CRUDs. Okay, let's copy this example code. Okay, click on show code and copy this MudCRUD HTML content. Okay, first let's add it over here. So let me remove this H3 tag. Okay, let's check the output. Okay, I am getting card rendered, but it is too much big, right? So let's reduce its size. Okay, so here on the card, let me add width property. Okay, like 250 pixels. Okay, now little better, right? So let's try to render this card by binding our data. Okay, by looping it. So for that, let me use for each for each. Okay, and here I can use my response object, that is all heroes collection. Okay, and item. So let's cut this HTML and add inside of the for each loop. Okay, let's check again. Okay, here you can see items are card is looped. I have around 5 items, so it is 5 times looped. So let's bind the data to our card. Okay, so first thing is here in this card header avatar, I'm going to render my ID value. Okay, so to render the ID value, I can use @ and item dot ID. Okay, and here in the card header content, let me remove this second mud text. Okay, and in the first mud text tag, let's render the name of the superhero. Okay, so for that @item dot name. Okay, so I can remove this card header action. I don't want this. Okay, and here for the image tag, we have to bind our image URL. So to bind image URL, so here there are double quotes, right? So we have to use @ and open the circular braces. So inside of it, we can write C# expression. So I am going to add item dot image URL. Okay. So here in the mud text body, let me render the franchise name. Okay. So franchise at the rate item dot franchise. So let's duplicate this tag and render the gender. Okay. Gender. So I binded all my properties from the response. I don't want these action buttons currently. Let's remove them. Okay. So if I save and run and now check the output. See, now our API response is rendered onto the MudBlazor card component. But they are coming one after another, right? Sorry, one after another in a single column. So let make them to render side by side. Okay. So for that, let me create a wrapper element. So to create a wrapper element in MudBlazor component, you can use mud container. Okay. If you want to use simple div also, that is fine. Okay. So let's render this entire for each loop inside of it. Okay. So if I check, there is much change, but a little bit spacing on the right left hand side. Okay. To make them side by side, I can add so class here C, capital C. This is MudBlazor class, not a normal HTML class. So to that I can provide MudBlazor styles like Flex. Okay. I'm applying a flex. See, now the components are coming one after another, much better, right? But on the top, there is no space, and between the chords, there is no space. So to apply the space, I can use one more class like MA, margin in all sides. Okay. So I will give 4, means 16 pixels. Okay. So let's check now. Now I got top margin, but there is no spacing between the chords. So for that, we have to apply a class on our mud card directly. So for that, I can use class, which is mud library class. Okay, and here I can specify margin. So on each card right hand side, I need some margin. Okay, specify like MR2. Okay, so if we check, okay, we are getting nice space between them, right? So from this, we completed our read operation. We created a API and we consumed that API in our Blazor WebAssembly class and we rendered them on the Blazor WebAssembly application using MudBlazor card component. Okay. In the next video, we are going to implement create operation. Okay, where we will add a HTTP post endpoint in the API project. And in Blazor project, we are going to create a form for adding the new component. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like the video, please do support by subscribing to channel. And also please don't forget to like and share the video. Soon we are going to meet with new content. Until then, signing off.